to order. Thanks for all being here tonight. Here we are once again meeting virtually, and appreciate all those in attendance and all those who may be watching. So let's go ahead and get on to it here. First item up on the agenda is the citizen input, and because of our virtual status, we've asked that any input be directed to Dee Dee ahead of time. So Dee Dee, is there anything? I haven't heard if we had any comments.
No public input.
Okay. Well, we encourage that as always. I know it's a little tougher to do, but always looking forward to comments if they're out there. So moving on down the line is the consent agenda. So from a board member, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I will second that motion.
I'd like a little bit of discussion
Yeah, go ahead.
on staffing, the new hires.
Okay.
So, I see that we hired 2 individuals, and I'm wondering, it got me thinking about our board goals, and if those board goals are being considered during the hiring process, because I see that there are 2 external candidates. So, wondering, for their internal candidates, on one of them, it doesn't say anything about teaching experience. It said they have some yoga instruction and martial arts and a business background. So,
Yeah, they're gonna come by. Yeah.
curious if obviously those are routes that we're looking to teach in our junior high physical fitness, and how the business background ties in, and if there's previous teaching experience, because there's nothing mentioned there of that. And if there was internal candidates, also, board goals, building relationships, and retention of staff are part of our board goals. And so, I don't want to be a part of, just putting out board goals if they're not embedding them in part of our daily practice. And if we are, great, fantastic. I need some clarification on some of that.
Yeah, good thought. I'm not sure how extensive the hiring process was, Mr. Harbart. Do you have any input and thought on that, or?
So yes, I do have some comments. So in both of those positions, the position, as you said, was hired from outside, and the candidates are screened by committee and or the principal and brings that forward. And the number of the candidate pool sometimes is not very large. And I think for the PE job, I think we had 2 candidates that were brought forward for interview, and on the other position, the math position, there were no candidate. There was like 4 candidates, and of those, I believe they offered possibly the interview to 4, and I think they interviewed 2 or 3. And what happens with those is the panel creates a series of questions, and then they have certain things that they listen to, and they rate them. And there is nowhere in the questions that a person specifically receives added points for being an internal candidate, because that would show favoritism. However, I think that's always a conversation that can occur within the hiring process. But I have confidence that our teams are trying to hire the candidate they feel is the best fit, the one that will serve in the position that they're asking to fill. And I think every person on every committee is looking to certainly, be thoughtful about doing those very things that you're asking about. Now, if you had a larger candidate pool, that would maybe be different. But I think all of the candidates that were basically qualified to be interviewed for these positions were interviewed. So
How many of those 5 total candidates were internal?
Well, there was only one person from the area.
Well, one person you hired was from the area. I mean, I guess Gold Beach is from the area. That's so close. Hey, Catherine, I don't know if,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback there.
Yeah, I just realized it's.
but the other piece of the question is on the gentleman that we hired here. I'm assuming it's gentleman, Lance. It provides no information about actual background in education. It says he's a yoga instructor and a martial arts instructor, and has worked in various levels of physical fitness and brings a business background. So I'm wondering, you know,
Let me clarify. That candidate will have their teaching endorsement in the state of. They are certified teacher in May. I think it was in May or June. They will have their certificate, which we always look at when we're interviewing candidates as a way to either have their certificate or a way to achieve that certificate through some type of entering a program of study to achieve that. And this candidate will be completed, will be certificated when they begin in August.
so currently not.
But yeah, it's essentially will be a first year teacher that will have their degree at the beginning of their teaching certificate in the beginning of the school year.
Okay.
So I have a question, and maybe this is going to need to be a question for an attorney or hiring practices, because I know that as a school board, when searching for a superintendent, you know, one of the criteria, one of the things we had is one that would be ideal was somebody who was familiar with small school districts. That's, you know, that has that kind of experience, and it reason for that is because it plays right into our desire for retention. We want somebody who has experience in this small town, who understands small town culture. So I'm somewhat confused, or just don't quite understand why it is that we can't have part of the hiring criteria if we've got an internal candidate. And I don't know the scenario here, but if we have an internal candidate who is experienced, has demonstrated experience, why we couldn't have that weighed. How would I'm just curious, maybe this is Alan's question for our attorney is, you know, if that's our board goal, it would seem that if we've got a perfectly qualified candidate who's already embedded in the community, who already lives here, who has a history, certainly would make sense to have that part of the hiring criteria. Is that because it's a board goal?
Yeah. So
I just wanted just a quick comment to that, and then we're kind of getting in the weeds a little bit.
Okay.
But when two candidates are equal in an interview, we would always go with the internal candidate.
Okay, perfect. That's I just wanted to know, curious to know how that's translating in terms of the board goal. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I know the candidate that the one is from Acadia, which is Northern California, is very familiar with the area. And so I do know what you call local. I don't know, that would be fairly local, I guess, familiar with the area.
Chico.
Or Chico. Is Acadia nearby?
No.
Oh,
Arcata. Sort of.
Arcata.
That's the Eureka area. Yeah.
Okay.
Irregardless, yeah. Is that okay? So as long as, I mean, you're right, Jay. So those do need to be reflected in the general district hiring practices. You know, of course, hiring recommendations are for staff, you know, recommendations at this level. So, but it's a good thing to kind of reinforce with the district as a whole and make sure we think about it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's something that in the future we need to. I mean, really, if our board goals are going to be ever realized, it has to be embedded into our processes on some level and at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And otherwise, we're just kind of throwing goals out there and hoping that they stick. And so,
if never talked about or acted on, what do you expect, right?
It's about intentionality in achieving those goals, and having them at the forefront. So that's where my mind's at. You know, because we probably invest a lot into the development of an internal candidate over a course of a year, and we're not only going to, you know, intentionally we potentially lose that investment, but we don't know what the future potential investment and reciprocation of turnover may look like down the road when we're working to build relationships with kids, when we're looking to build relationships with staff, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's, it's the building blocks. We're in the people business, kids and staff, that's what we do. And so I just hope and reiterate that it's at the forefront of our minds when we're going into these processes.
I can understand that, because the likelihood of retaining a staff that's already in the area, as opposed to bringing someone from out of the area who doesn't know the area, it just seems like we need to give more points instead of an equal on both accounts. Then somebody who's from the area maybe needs to be given a couple extra points in the hiring process because of the future ramifications it might have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. All right, good point to keep in mind. Thanks, Jay. Any other comments? Okay, good. How'd you know? Any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, let's go ahead and look to vote to approve then. Jay?
Come back to me, Alan.
Catherine?
Aye.
Janelle? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
There you go. I hear you now.
Sorry, but I had something that I wanted to add. Do I have to add after we vote then? Because you couldn't hear me earlier. I don't know what's wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss him? Okay, let's go ahead and, if you have a comment, yeah, please go ahead and do the comment. Then we'll do a vote here with you.
I'm going to reiterate from a different perspective, but hiring a lot of people in the city of Brookings as well. And the investment that you make in people, the long-term, the relationships that you make with the community, a little different than the relationships with kids, but I think very similar and important. I put a lot of weight on, you don't have to be born and raised in Brookings. It helps, but you don't have to be. The investment in the community, you have a house here, your kids go to school here, you own a business here, whatever those are, they actually mean something in the long run. And unfortunately, if you don't have that, and even Northern California, 6 hours away, is not local. Brookings is so different. We're so rural. I have so many employees that last 18 months or less when they come here without that investment. So anyway, I would strongly encourage, if it's principals that make these decisions, I really think that you need to strongly consider that in those decisions if we could pass that on to their group.
Okay, appreciate that, Jill. Thank you. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, let's now move to a vote. Catherine? Did we lose you, Catherine? Because we can't hear you.
Nope, I'm here now. Aye.
Okay. Janelle? I wonder if we lost her.
Aye.
Repeat that, Janelle.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Janice?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
Okay, and I as well. Appreciate the discussion. Thank you. District reports and information. Mr. Eberhardt, we'll turn the virtual table over to you.
Okay. I'm going to start off tonight by saying hello. Hope you're all well, wherever you are at on the planet Earth right now. It's nice to see you again this month. We're going to turn it over now to Carol Leonard, who's been leading the vice principal team in addressing attendance. I think that was one of our big continuous improvement plan goals, was to improve attendance, was to break down some of the silos that exist between the buildings. And they presented in, I think it was March or April, and they came back today. They're coming back today was to show you kind of the work that has been completed. And I think it's a great addition. I think it helps us look forward to tracking that in a more favorable way and supporting families. So I'm going to turn it over to Carol Leonard, and she's going to present.
All right.
And show us that.
Good evening, everybody. All right, I'm going to share my screen. You have to tell me whether, oh, there it goes. Okay. Sometimes it goes. All right. You should see a blue square.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. This is where we ended in the last meeting when we presented to the board. These were our next steps. So the first one was to expand attendance team to include K-12 stakeholders. And we did that. We started with our teams, but then COVID came and we had to not really meet anymore. So that kind of, we had a team ready. We had all of our pieces from the different buildings. We had Jay was there, and there was a couple of people that were unable to make it. And due to the time, so we were going to make it later. However, we were able to due to school closures. So that is in the works. So it'll continue. Collaborate with the ESD attendance specialist. I've been working with Dawn Granger from the ESD. She's the attendance person. And I've sent our document back and forth to her. And we've been kind of communicating via email with the pieces that we put together. Review sample attendance plans from districts achieving results. So I've pulled from Attendance Works, Attendance Matters, and South Coast ESD, and Marco and Vicky have been looking at other school models. And so we came together and we put those ideas together as a team. And so we'll see that in just a moment. And then our idea was to develop the K-12 attendance plan to meet our SIP goal, which was to improve attendance, getting kids to school. We need to identify the professional development. Chris Schofield has been very diligent about putting together several trainings over the course of the last few months on Power School, and he's doing a great job with that, and he continues to do that. So we are doing that piece of it as well. And then we have put together what we call the nuts and bolts of our attendance plan, in which I'm going to share with you. There are other pieces that, documents and pieces that we're still working on, but this is the basis of it. Okay. All right. Can you see now? Does it say Brookings Harbor?
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of just an attendance plan, we also included an absenteeism plan. So what are we doing when we have those students who aren't coming to school? So there were 3 components that we looked at. We looked at the tier 1, which is the universal. These are the things we do for all of our kids in the entire district. We want to make sure that we're giving credit for those kids who are coming to school, whether it's, they miss a day or here or there, but we want to give credit to everybody, and we want to make sure they're included in all the rewards, even though they may not make it every single day. So that's and then there's pieces to build in that, and I'll show you that in a moment. Tier 2 was our targeted, those students who are missing 10% of school days, and of course our tier 3, which are individualized, more than 20% of their school days. So as we were looking at this, we came together and we put together, these are our universal district-wide attendance plan strategies. These are the strategies that we will use with all students in our districts, in every building, for attendance. So there's lots of stuff here, and I will be more than happy to share this document with you, but reading all this might not be beneficial to anybody right now, unless you would like me to. I don't know. All right, so there's a lot of things. We're going to meet quarterly, monthly, and as a district team, as well as building teams, and look at our attendance and then make our plans from there. We're going to send out our flyers, get information out to the community on attendance, holidays with specific messaging, how sick is too sick. And so those are some of the things there. And then some of the reward ideas we came up with were classroom competitions or students formally recognized for attendance, incentives or opportunity drawings on rainy days, and then looking at those 25th, 50th, and 100th day celebrations for all kids. And then that tiered piece to where if you've made improvements on your attendance, you're still going to be rewarded for that, because we want to make sure that if you're coming to school and you weren't, we want to celebrate that. So we kind of built a bunch of stuff around those things. And this is like our toolbox. So this toolbox, we all agreed, district, our team agreed that all of our buildings are going to be using these strategies in our buildings for all of our kids. And then when we look at our targeted tier 2, these are students who are missing more than 10% of their school days. We intervene with students having attendance problems, connect before correct. So we want to make those positive connections first and start looking at teaching why attendance is important. I have a parent community survey that's in our resource document that we're working on that I put together. You can do check in and check out. So we put together some things that we can do with those families who are just right at that 10% level to where we can start getting them back on track. Okay. And then of course we have our individualized 3. These are more the 20%ers. This is where we're making contact. We set up attendance plans. We figure out the root of the problem. Is it because something happening at home that they're not making to school? There's just something we can do to connect them with an outside resource to help support them. Okay. So then that's kind of the pieces that we have for our attendance plan. For our absence plan, and when we have students who are reaching those 10% goals, et cetera, then we start through this administrative process. And so all 3 buildings will follow this process. So tier 2, tier 3 students. We will do our hourly and daily attendance checks, reports. We will do period attendance, AM and PM phone calls for unexcused absences. Board policy will follow board policy. What's excused from class, right in there is the board policy. We make personal phone calls home for students with confirmed skips. Weekly attendance reports run every Monday. And then in our buildings, we look at that's the building level team to where we look at who's our regular attenders, who's our at risk, who's our chronic, who's our severe. And then we start our process of, is this the first friendly letter? Is this where we're at 20%, we need to make those phone calls. Do we need to set up an attendance plan? So we kind of, from this point on, once we get these kids moving through this process, then the next steps follow. So we build an attendance team to meet monthly to review tiered attendance plan. After the second letter has been sent, so the friendly's been sent out there, hey, we noticed you've been absent. Is there anything we can do to help you? Yada, 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 and put the data on there. And then we send our second letter, and once our second letter is sent, that kind of is like a heads up. Hey, we noticed that you're still missing school. What's happening? Maybe we can meet. Is there anything we can do for you? And those letters are included in our resource packet. We're still working on the ones, we have several letters, but we're working on a uniform, friendly, and it'll look a little different from the elementary school because we only have a day versus the periods. So those pieces will be a little bit different. And then we will move on, make adjustments. We're going to give them a 3-week period to make the contact, to try to get to school. After 3 weeks, we're like, okay, we're at letter 3. Now we're going to be sending it certified mail. We're going to request, if it already hasn't happened, based on the information we've received earlier on, it'll be a required meeting with the families to set up an attendance plan if there isn't already one there, and to go through those steps to get them on track. And then 3 weeks from that one, if we're still not getting any work, we're just going to follow the board policy JEA on compulsory attendance notices and citations. The administrator will refer the student to the superintendent for truancy citation. And at that point, it's the last chance contract with the superintendent. And from there, it's at that level. So, and then all 3, and then truancy court if we're going in that direction. Building protocols, this is who does it. Attendance secretary, counselor, teacher, and/or administrator will work as a team to complete the absenteeism plan as outlined above. So we'll get as many people knowledgeable about the child when we create some of these things. The attendance secretary will complete attendance reports and attendance logs. Phone calls will be made as needed, and letters will be generated from PowerSchool. So this is the nuts and bolts of our plan. And then we have, like our resource, I have a PBIS lesson on attendance. We have a survey for parents on why they see, that has bullying on there, and a couple other things I could share, but it would flop me out of here. But so that's where we're at. Any questions?
So you're ready to kind of go with this sort of plan, assuming we have normal school in the fall, but that's ready to kind of plug in and go then, huh? Yes,
we're ready to go. And I believe that I know that County Offices, I'm gonna say that we haven't printed our student handbooks yet. So these pieces will be in there, part of the attendance, and then it'll be, there's a staff handbook we're currently working on. And so there's lots of different places we're going to vet it. So we'll get that information out there to stakeholders and parents.
Thank you, Carol. So let me give you a snapshot of kind of where we were, what we did, and where we are now. So when when we began the year, we had 3 different attendance policies. We were documenting attendance absences differently in each building and applying board policies differently in each building as well. So we came together. Some of those conversations were a little bit of an aha. And I think at the end of the day, we really reached out and gained information from what other folks are doing in districts, also using some statewide attendance things that I think are very helpful. And so we do not have to reinvent the wheel here as far as letters, and much of the support can be gained from these other systems that are out there for us to use that we already had access to. So we have uniform documentation, monthly reporting. We have letters that are uniform across the district. We have the same end, which instead of having only K or high school that could end up and possibly going to the judge, I feel much more comfortable with implementing a program that even if it's a second or third grader, that we can go to that level where we gain the support of the attendance court, not in a punitive manner, but in a supportive manner to maybe encourage the compliance. And our hope is that we eliminate the need to even do that by putting interventions in place. So I kudos to them, and this is a start. And I think the silos were broken down in that whole, in many ways, in creating that attendance plan. So I look forward to hearing how that works. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the same kind of thing in the high school planner. I know that was given for you to look at, and also how it relates to the approving the student parent planner, which you'll see too. Once again, prior to this year, every school had essentially a different handbook. Deanne, Ms. Baratek led the team and created one handbook using OSBA's model, and threw it out to folks and gained a lot of feedback, a lot of collaboration. We feel really, really positively about the handbook that we have that will represent all buildings. Each building will have a supplemental handout that shows a little bit of the uniqueness of their building around scheduling and maybe some of the communication that occurs that's different in an elementary school than it is at a high school. But we're really pleased that alignment has occurred as well through a lot of collaboration. And that, once again, breaks down silos, makes this experience for the students and families one that we think is a win-win. So we currently have, and Ms. Dee Dee and Carolyn, the teams are also working on a staff handbook, which will be in your next month's board agenda to approve. And this will be, once again, it'll be aligned K-12. So if we look at our attendance, our student parent handbook, and our staff handbook, those were not aligned prior to this year, and they will be aligned when students and families return to school next year. And we're proud of that work. It's not been easy work, but I think it's certainly going to help the student and family experience. Do you have any questions on those items?
No questions. Glad to hear about the alignment.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to thank Carol for all of her hard work.
Yeah.
And shout out to Vicky and Marco. They were there to help out. I just kind of, we all work together. So.
Yeah.
I also want to say that having those student planners and the handbooks all aligned throughout the whole school district is phenomenal work. And wow, I'm just, given what you guys have been dealing with this year, I am so appreciative of that, and just really want to acknowledge that.
I think something that's kind of unique too is like in the staff handbook, or the student parent planner, all the links are live. They go to the proper board documents and things like that. And that's a goal, once again, to use this technology, and we'll be more virtual, hopefully, in our registration practices as well. And I think Carol mentioned that Mr. Schofield has been working with PowerSchool. I think just our ability to access the technology that we already have in the district, I think is going to help us be more efficient as well. Next thing I wanted to share a little bit was the end of the year overview. We are scheduled to have students on our calendar through June 17th. Now, what that looks like between now and June 17th is a little bit unknown right now. So the goal is to have a few options. We are pursuing a memorandum of understanding with the union right now to implement a work share agreement that would allow us to have 6 furlough days between now and the end of the school year. And this is not unlike, I think Portland was the first school district to do it. There was some trepidation that districts had on what the community reaction would be. But more communities have jumped on. There are multiple ones that are doing this week, just as we are, to implement some furlough days before now and their end of their contract. What this will allow us to do is save and put a significant amount of money, probably $250,000 aside into a larger carry forward, so we can use that into next year's budget. And we think it's a win-win. There is a little bit of a process. It's going to require a lift by the district office staff to have every person who is on the district payroll to be put into Oregon unemployment. And through the Oregon unemployment registration, if we can come to an agreement, when we do those 6 furlough days, the staff will be able to not only access Oregon unemployment, but they will also be able to access some of the CARES Act funding that comes from the federal government. So the days that are furloughed are days that we would remove from their pay. It would be offset, and the staff would be made whole for those days. And it's an uncomfortable situation to a degree that we're doing this. However, it's one thing that we kind of watched and other districts did it, and we felt the need financially to move in line with that. And so we're pursuing that at this time. And it would begin possibly as early as next Friday, the 29th of May, with 1 day that week and 2 days the next 2 weeks, and then 1 day the week of June 15th.
I have a question.
Sure.
Chris. So I know this is a long shot. I'm often a hopeful person. Alan's looking around going, what is he going to say? If the Oregon Supreme Court upholds the Baker City ruling, is going back to school an option this year?
Well, the Oregon Supreme Court, yesterday or the day before, they did not uphold that.
No. They put in a stay, but they're waiting to collect the information to make a ruling on it. And if they rule in favor, which opens things back up, and we have essentially a month left in school, is getting these kids back in front of their teachers and pro-social role models and all of the things that come along with that, the intangibles that we're losing, an option.
I can only guess that would probably be a big lift legally. There would be probably challenges around folks that have pre-existing conditions. I think there would be a whole lot of finagling that would probably tie that up. Could we do it? I think we could probably do a lot of things that we didn't think we could do before. Is it what's best? I don't know. I guess I would. I don't know. I'm scared to think of that, Jay. Actually, what that might bring about as far as creating an upheaval to bring kids back. We have students that were having a hard time contacting in the first place because they maybe have left the state. Maybe they've stayed with somebody someplace else. So I think that would be a big lift.
Well, even if it's an opportunity, I guess I'm just trying to think of second stages. If something like that happens, it may not be formally going, everybody's going back to school formally or whatever the case may be. Having the opportunity to, re-engage some level. I don't know what it would look like, but, I'm forward thinking.
Yeah, I think the thing that would be a challenge is any kind of mandatory requirement of students to attend would probably be where you would run into a challenge, because currently we have waived student instructional hours, and so there's been a kind of we're going to hold kids harmless for school this year for the remainder of this time, and hopefully that we can create a distance learning where students learn and they move forward. But if we are ordered to go back to school, there would be a challenge in that. Does that mean that every student has to come back to school? If you are a sixth grade child and you live with grandma and your parents and grandma has COPD or something like that, is that child exempt? for example, a family that might have someone who has COVID. There was recently a case in Curry County. Would we expect that student to come to school? And could there be, what would that be like for someone who has to sit by that child or in the same first grade classroom or fifth grade classroom? So I think those things would probably create a real firestorm of challenges that I don't even think we could fully address in the time period it would take to ramp up and get back to school.
Okay.
I appreciate your thinking, and yeah, we wonder that stuff all the time. But there's a lot of what if.
Yeah, I'm sure it's on the, there's a lot of community members that probably are wondering the same when they heard the Baker City ruling, and, they start to, focus their lenses like, whoa, what can happen?
Yeah, what would happen? Yeah.
What does that mean? And so I just wanted to provide some clarification to what that would look like. So on with the furlough days.
Yeah. Any questions about that?
Well, I would like for Carol to take down her computer screen.
Oh, the attendance.
Oh, you're still sharing there, Carol. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Carol.
So the continue on with the end of the year plan, one thing that we have really tried hard to do through the SIA was to create kind of a vision on how we look and behave differently in the future. And one thing we heard a lot on was engaging students in a different way. And through our surveys and things like that, we looked and we came up with the desire to do professional development. And we engaged in conversations about restorative practices and also positive discipline. So we do have an opportunity, and we're still engaging in a conversation to possibly add that to the end of the school year, along with possibly furlough days. We have created a conversation with the company that has done much of our positive discipline training, and we could use title money for professional development that would be aside from the budget. And this could occur possibly the week of June 8th, which we could do it June 9th, 10th, and 11th. And there is a chance that might also be part of the end of the year. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that as a possibility when we think of the end of the year. And the next thing is the student investment account. So it's been on the website for some time now, and the funding right now from the corporate activity tax. We saw information today from the forecasting board. It's obviously down significantly, and whether or not any of those dollars are flowed through to the schools, part of their SIA grant, is unknown. There are different messages that say we should use that for just the standard school funding mechanism and not set that aside for the SIA monies. However, what we're prepared to do is if we receive any of those SIA monies, we would use them per our SIA grant application and probably address a few areas that were primary. One of them would be in the area of enhancing physical capacities to meet requirements for the ADA, which is anytime you do building, that's a one-time use of funds. We would really struggle with hiring staff unless it was something that we felt we could support, because we don't want to have potential layoffs or potential reduction of staff, bring someone on, and then that funding disappears. That's a challenge as well. So if we receive those funds, we'll probably try and allocate them to one-time facility improvements around Americans with Disability Act and access, and then look at a use in maybe a staff area that is of highest need. Could be for a social emotional learning specialist or something like that we thought we could continue to fund. On the SIA, Dee Dee, did we receive any? Okay,
So no comment on that. Okay.
No.
The last thing I wanted to share with, so you can be aware of this, because someone might ask, the summer food. At this time, our summer program at the end of June 17th, there will be no summer food program. But here's what the summer food program is consistent of. So when the pandemic occurred, any family that already had an EBT card, basically K-school students are already free lunch. That receive EBT cards were receiving additional funds that was plugged into that Oregon Trails card. and that will go through June. And at the end of the school year, students will still have their EBT card able to access additional funds through that card, and so that some routine maintenance in the kitchen, and there is some staff that's been on board, delivered over an hour, and there's some fatigue there. That is a group we've had to call back, and Ms. Badger has done a nice job in forming kind of some support of the community. Where the bags of food has decreased. It's still over 5 on Tuesdays and Fridays. We've done a nice job with the current programs that we know will be in place. We will not have the summer food program as in the past. Any questions? Okay. And that's all I had for my.
Thank you. Is someone speaking there? Or is that me? Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the building report going forward? And summaries. Any board comments there? Those being, and I know it's probably one more thing that was asked to do, but out of them generally, so thank you. Okay, item number 5, action item. First up here to approve our 2021 board goals. Speaking of board goals. Now, board, if you recall, these are what we put together. They're in your packet. This is what we put together with Steve a couple weeks ago, I guess, first part of this month. Part of the feedback of the board self-evaluation and the discussion we had during that school board meeting, and they're summarized here in the board packet. So I guess we're looking for a motion to approve the board goals.
Hey, Alan, what page is that on in the?
Oh, I just had it. I'm scrolling to it right now. Here, hold on.
58.
58?
Yeah.
Okay.
50.
Good. I was at like 110.
Yeah. There it is. Yep. So again, in order to discuss here, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Yeah.
Copy here.
I'll go ahead. I move to approve the 2021 Perkins Harbor School Board goals.
I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on what we have in our board packet here?
Yeah. So this is different than our board goals of last year, correct?
Yeah, so we kind of took those, if you recall, in our meeting with Steve. I think it was the 5th of May. We took the self-evaluation feedback, and these are the 3 or so things that kind of rose to the top of that evaluation feedback, if you recall,
Okay.
based on our discussion and Steve's notes and a little bit of feedback